الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل بدعة ضلالة ثم أما بعد أيها الأحبة الكرام السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In our previous lecture we started talking about forbidden transactions in Islam. And we said it's a general principle that any transaction that contains any aspect of gharar, which is uncertainty, or deception, or injustice, or riba, is considered to be invalid transaction or invalid contract. And we talked about the first three aspects, which is uncertainty, deception, and injustice. And inshallah, in this lecture, we'll talk about the fourth aspect, which is riba. So the word riba, literally in the Arabic language, means addition, increment, increase. And this is why, a small hill in Arabic is called rabwa. It's from the same word, rabwa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِّبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِندَ اللَّهِ. So the word riba and yarbu used to mean increase or increment. This is the literal meaning of the word riba. As a technical term, there are many definitions for riba. For example, some scholars they defined riba as an increased amount in one of the two exchange commodities or items. It is increment or increase in one of the two exchange items. It is an increase which is free from compensation. It is a profitless increase. There is no compensation for that increase. This is one definition. But when we say exchanging an increase in amount of when you exchange two items, we are referring basically to the so-called ribawi commodities. So what are the ribawi commodities? Ribawi commodities, those are the commodities in which riba can take place. And they were mentioned in hadith, an authentic hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, narrated by Imam Muslim. Hadith Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الذهب بالذهب والفضة بالفضة والبر بالبر والشعير بالشعير والتمر بالتمر والملح بالملح يدا بيد مثلا بمثل. وفي رواية أخرى رواها الصحابي الجليل قتادة, another version of this hadith, قال فإذا اختلفت هذه الأصناف فبيعوا كيف شئتم. So the other version is narrated by Ubadah ibn Samit. Ubadah ibn Samit is also narrated by Imam Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ says, فَإِذَا اخْتَلَفَتْ هَذِهِ الْأَصْنَافُ فَبِيعُوا كَيْفَ شِئْتُمْ. In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned 6 items. He mentioned gold and silver. He mentioned wheat, barley, dates, and salt. Now the scholars divided those 6 items into 2 groups. The first group includes gold and silver. And the second group includes the other 4, which is wheat, barley, dates, and salt. Okay, we have group 1 and group 2. Right. Those are called al-amwal al-ribawiyya, or the ribawi commodities. Now, each group, for example, the first group consists of 2 kinds or 2 classes, gold and silver. And the second group consists of 4 classes, which is wheat, barley, salt, and dates. Right. if you exchange two commodities or two items belong to the same group and to the same kind, then it has to be yadan biyad, and mithlan means it has to be hand to hand and equal quantities. Yani for example, if you're exchanging gold for gold, it has to be hand to hand and it should be equal amounts. Like for example, 100 grams of gold for 100 grams of gold, or 200 grams of silver for 200 grams of silver. Also wheat for wheat, same group and same kind. It has to be equal measures, and also it has to be hand to hand. So if the exchange between two items belonging to the same group and the same class, it has to be, those two conditions has to be fulfilled. It has to be hand to hand, and it should be equal measures. Now, if it is from different group, okay, no, if they are from the same group but different class, like you exchanging gold for silver, or wheat for dates, or barley for salt, it does not have to be equal measures, but it has to be hand to hand. And if you exchange two items from different groups and different kinds, then there is no restriction. So we have three possibilities here. Again, those 6 items mentioned in the hadith are divided into 2 groups. The first group is gold and silver, and the second group is the other 4, which is wheat, barley, salt, and dates. Group 1 and group 2. Now, if we're exchanging 2 items belonging to the same group and the same class, 2 conditions need to be fulfilled. The exchange should take place right at the place of the aqd, of the contract, before separation. This is the first condition. The second condition, the exchange amount should be of equal measures. This is if the 2 items belong to the same group and the same class. Now, if they belong to the same group, but they are of different class, then it has to be hand to hand, but it does not have to be equal measures. Now, if the 2 exchange items do not belong to the same group nor to the same class, then there is no restriction. There is no restriction. It could be changed, different amounts. You can give your dates now and your gold later, because gold is a different group and a different class than wheat. So if you're exchanging gold for wheat or gold for dates, then you do not have to fulfill those 2 conditions. There is no restrictions as to the amount and also as to the time of delivery. طيب. Now, the hadith mentioned all the 6 items, but the jurists, the scholars, added more items using qiyas. We said qiyas is a valid source accepted by the vast majority of the scholars. Qiyas is analogy. And qiyas is to extend a rule from an original case to a new case, providing that there is some type of similarities between the 2 cases. There is a illah. Illah is a common attribute between the 2 cases. Here, the scholars added other items who are similar to those items. They have common or similarity to those items. But they are different. The scholars, after agreeing on those 6, they disagree on what items should be added. Why? Because they have different illah, different cause. For example, for the Hanafi and the Hanbali position, that for the first group, they said the illah, or the effective attribute, or the effective cause, is that those 2 items, gold and silver, are measured by weight. While for the other 4, they said the effective cause that those items are measured by dry volume. So they said, they used qiyas, an analogy. They said anything that is measured by weight belong to the first group, and anything that is weighed by dry volume is added to the second group. For example, if you are exchanging steel for steel, it's not mentioned in the hadith, but using the qiyas of the Hanafis, it should be treated exactly like gold for gold. It has to be equal measures, and it should be hand to hand. Now, if you are, for example, exchanging any type of food that's measured by dry volume, for the same class, it has to be hand to hand, it has to be equal measures. This is the first opinion. The second opinion is the opinion of the Malikis. They said no, for the first group, the effective attribute or the effective illah, the effective cause is al-thamaniya, that gold and silvers are used as prices, monetary prices. And for the second group, the four items, they said the illah or the effective cause that they are food and could be stored for extended periods of time. And if you have barley or dates, you can store it at home without a need for a refrigerator for extended periods of time. They said this is the effective attribute on those four. If you look to those four, barley, wheat, dates, and salt, that it's food for people, and you can extend it, you can store it and preserve it for extended periods of time without the need of any, refrigerator or anything of that. They said this is so. For the first group, they added anything that is used as a price. So they added currency, for example, and money. Okay. For the second group, they added rice, because rice is food for people and is measured and also can be stored and preserved for extended periods of time. The Shafi'is agreed with the Malikis for the first group. They said the illah is they are prices, but they disagree with them for the first group. They said the second group, and they said it is the illah is that they are food for people. So anything that is consumed as food, by people is considered, to be belonging to that group. So they added fruits, for example, and vegetables. So if you're exchanging vegetables for vegetables, it has to be equal measures and hand to hand. But the illah mentioned by the Malikis is the most one close, the closest or the most stronger one of those opinions is the opinion of the Malikis. Okay, because it's very clear and evident, those two items in the first group, they use as prices at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, and for the second group, which is the four items, they are food for people at that time and now, and also they can be the common factor between the common attribute between them, that they are all could be stored for extended period of time, and it is the easiest among those four because it only restricts the ribawi commodities to those. Otherwise, if you said any type of food is included, this means that every type, anything that consumed by people as food, is, you have to be careful when you're dealing with it. It has to be hand to hand and should be equal measures. So the opinion of the Malikis seem to be the stronger among the other opinions. Okay. Now, as I said, if you're exchanging items from within the group and within the same class, then it has to be hand to hand and equal measures. If within the group but different class, hand to hand, but it does not have to be the same or equal measures. And if it is across the group and across the kind, then there is no requirement. طيب. Riba. There are two types of riba. The first one is called riba al-fadl. Riba al-fadl is when you exchange two items belonging to the same group as the same class with an unequal measures. With an unequal measure, this is called riba al-fadl. And the second type of riba is called riba al-nasi'a. Nasi'a means delay or deferment or waiting. And this also called riba dain, the riba of the debt. And it is defined as an increased or increment amount that paid by the borrower to the lender in return of give him an extension in time to pay off the debt, which is the known. This is the famous type of riba practiced at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Jahiliyyah people, they used to deal with that type of riba, and this is the riba that the ayat in the Quran came to prohibit it. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى, like this ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَذَرُوا مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الرِّبَى. It's also another ayah in Al Imran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَأْكُلُوا الرِّبَى أَضْعَافًا مُضَاعَفًا. So mainly those ayat refers to this riba, and the Sunnah came to prohibit the other type of riba, which is riba al-fadl. Okay? طيب. Now, the conventional or the commercial or riba-based banking system is based on riba. It's based on riba. While the Islamic banking system or Islamic financial system is based in partnership, investment, trade, buying and selling, but not in riba. طيب. Let's inshallah just go in some details about riba-based banking and Islamic financing system or Islamic banking system. طيب. Now the riba-based banking system, they make money by selling money. In Arabic it's called خلق الأموال. They make profit by selling money. So they sell, for example, $1,000 for $1,500 or $1,200 or $1,100. Okay, and just to simplify it, a depositor deposits money in his saving account. The bank will give him an interest, say for example 3%. And the bank will use the same money and lend it to a borrower for a higher interest rate. And the difference between the two goes to the bank. Like this amount of money may be lended to a borrower through a credit card transaction. And that borrower will pay, say, 15% or 20% interest. Okay. Now the depositor will get the 3%, and the difference between the 20 and the 3 goes to the bank. This is exactly how they make money. This is a major source of money. Of course, they have other sources like ATM access fees, overdraft fee, things like that. Okay, but the major source of their money is selling money. You deposit money, they take the same money you deposited and lend it to a customer or a client, and they take higher interest, and the difference between the interest they give to the depositor and the interest they gain or get from the client or the borrower goes to the bank. This is basically this in a simple way how the riba-based banks works. But what is the ruling concerning dealing with riba-based banks? First of all, it is prohibited to deposit or have an account in a riba-based bank. Okay? It is prohibited to have an account in a riba-based bank. Number one. It's prohibited, of course, to deal with a riba-based bank, either depositing or taking a loan, because an interest and riba will be applied. It is prohibited to work in a riba-based bank, whether the individual works as a teller or a loan officer or a security guard or even a contractor. I'm talking about the general rules, but there are some exceptions, inshallah. Okay, in any capacity, even a cleaning company that cleans, the banks or the building, an IT professional who write applications and software for the bank. Dealing with banks in any capacity is prohibited. Why? For two reasons. The first, the general principle stated by the ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah,
وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ.
Cooperate and help each other in doing good, and do not help each other in doing evil. Okay, so it's a general principle. And specifically when it comes to the riba, the Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ آكِلَ الرِّبَى وَمُوكِلَهُ وَكَاتِبَهُ وَشَاهِدَيْهِ. The Prophet ﷺ says Allah curses the one who take the riba, and the one who give it, and the one who writes the contract, and the two witnesses for the contract. Anyone deals with that in any capacity, whether he's the taker or the giver, or the one who writes the contract, like a loan officer, the one who advertises for it, or the one who is a witness, who sign as a witness for that riba contract. All of them will be cursed by Allah. Okay, so dealing with a riba-based bank in any capacity is prohibited. Of course, a loan officer bear more sin than a teller or someone who clean or fix the air conditioner or things like that. But in general, yes, there are different prohibition levels, but in general it's prohibited to deal with any riba-based bank in any capacity. I have this diagram here. This shows you how they make money. Like, the depositor deposits the money, okay? Now, in return for a small amount of interest, and the bank will lend the money, to a client for a higher interest rate, and the difference goes to the bank. Inshallah, I'm going to talk about some differences between Islamic banks and conventional or riba-based banks. If you remember when we talked about the characteristics of Islamic financing system in our first lecture, we mentioned some of those differences, but inshallah we'll do it. I'll say it again because it's very related to this issue here. First of all, for the Islamic banking system, or Islamic banks, or Islamic financial institutions, their functions, their operating modes, and their principles are derived from the teachings of Islam, from the Sharia. All the activities of Islamic banks is governed by the rules of the Sharia. While in the riba-based system, or riba-based banks, their functions, their principles, their operating modes are based fully on man-made laws. This is the basic difference between the two. And we said this fact stems from the principle that, wealth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So any activity, like earning or spending of that wealth has to be governed by the rules and the guidelines of the true owner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why for Islamic banking system, all the activities are based on the rules of the Sharia, the Quran and the Sunnah. And the opposite is true for the riba-based banks. All their principles, functions, and operating modes are based and activities based on man-made laws. Islamic banking system promotes risk sharing between the bank or the provider of the capital and the client, the one who use the funds, there is a share risking, you know. Maybe it's because it's like a partnership, an investment. If there is a profit, they will share it. If there is losses, they will share it. طيب. In the non-Islamic banking system, the client is assured of a predetermined profit or a predetermined interest. He is assured to get that. If you deposit your money in a riba-based bank and they granted you 3% interest, then you will get that 3%. Okay. طيب. Why? Because you know in the Islamic system it is either partnership or a trade or investment, so there is a risk of loss. Like also at the same time there is a great deal of possibility to have or to make profits. In fact, you know the studies that's done for Islamic banking system, it's all, most of the time they are in the profit side, and very high percentage of profit, and it could reach up to 13, 14, even 15 or 20% profits. Okay, but also there is a risk of, you know, losses. طيب. The relationship between the provider of the capital, the bank, and the user of the fund, the client. In the Islamic banking system, the relationship is either partnership, the two act as partners, okay, or investment, or trade, like buying and selling. While the relationship between the bank and the client in the non-Islamic system is a relationship between a creditor and a debtor. Just loan, lending and borrowing. Okay, there is no investment, especially for the system, the American banking system. Banks are banned from investment because they are only to sell money only. Okay, طيب. And this is why, because of this relationship between the client and the bank in the Islamic system is partnership investment, so the bank places more emphasis or greater emphasis on the business of the client. They need to make sure that this business or this project is profitable because they are partners with you. While in the non-Islamic banking system, the bank is not interested in your project. You take the loan whether you want to buy a car or to buy a house, it's your business. He will not restrict you to this, to do this or that. You can borrow money from a bank to buy a car or to buy a house. Okay? The bank is not going to, you know, get into the details of your business because he's not interested in the business. He's not a partner. He is only a lender, and he will get profits from you, whether your project or your, you know, house or that business damaged or lost, they have losses. The bank don't care because he does not care because he would receive his money back with the interest. But here, because in the Islamic system, the bank is a partner with the client, so he needs to make sure that this is a good business, this is a profitable business. This is why he investigate, okay, and get into the details of the business of the client because he's a partner with that client, okay. And this is why, you know, in non-Islamic banking systems, they put greater emphasis on the credit worthiness of the client. In the Islamic system, this does not matter because it's not a loan. You are my partner, okay, and this can give you a good sign to tell. Alhamdulillah, now we have many institutions, many organizations who claim that they provide, you know, Sharia compliant, like home buying. Okay, you have to check. Now I just only found one organization who said we don't care about your credit, we don't check your credit, because we are not lending you the money, we are partners. But this organization located in Virginia, but they have limited resources. This is the most, the most organization that, you know, most compliant with the Sharia. Okay, they use the same principles used by others, which is partnership. Like you get into partnership with them. Like you want to purchase a house, then you provide a percentage, like 20% of the price of that house. Then they will provide the rest. Now, a partnership is between you and them. You have 20% of that company, and they have 80%. Okay. Now, either you rent the house from them, or you can rent it to a third party. No problem. Okay. They will evaluate the price of the rent in that neighborhood for that house, say $2,000. Now, if you rent that house, you pay $2,000 monthly, but you own 20% of that $2,000. But you pay it to them. Means that you are purchasing part of their shares every month. In 15 or 20 years, according to the deal between you and them, you end up owning 100%, and they end up owning 0%. Okay, so they don't check your credit because they said we are real partners. Okay, the relation between us is partnership, is not lender and borrower partnership. Secondly, anything that need to be paid, like for example the taxes, the insurance, or if a damage happened or there is a need to fix something, it would be fixed by both of you according to your shares. If you want to sell the house anytime, the house will be sold, and the distribution would be according to the then share between you. Like if the house sold after 10 years, and at that time, in 10 years, your share goes up to, say, 70%, and the shares drop to 30%, then you own 30% of the price of that house, and they own 30%. Okay. There are other institutions who claimed that they offer the same thing, but if you get into the details of their contracts, they are not. Because they don't share anything with you. Even if the house is sold, they get their money. And they said the rest for you if there is a profit, or if there is losses, then you bear the losses. So you have to be careful. Okay, and one of the signs to indicate that it is not alone, make sure that the requirements of credit report or having a credit score. Because this is a mentality of lending and borrowing. The creditworthiness of the client. Okay, if it's not required, this could be a good indication that this is a real partnership. It is not a creditor-debtor relationship. It is a partnership or investment. Also, Islamic banks, they use other than this type of partnership. They use the so-called murabaha. Murabaha, we said this is a sale plus the cost plus profit contract. We talked about this before. Like for example, if you want to purchase a house, you go to the Islamic bank. Now, you will request the bank to purchase the house for you. Now, the condition for murabaha that both parties of the contract, the bank and the client, both of them, they know the actual price of the house, and they know the amount of profits that would be added by the bank. So the bank will purchase the house for a specific price, then own it and resell it to you at a higher price paid over a period of time. Now this type of contract is used by Islamic banks a lot. And murabaha, so it's called murabaha. It's another option. Partnership is an option, murabaha is another option. And it's very profitable for the bank to go through the murabaha, or also to go for partnership. This is another alternative to riba, and it's used by also some organizations in here. But also you have to be careful and check the details of the contract, because what they present in their website might be different from the real terms in the contract. Wallahu ta'ala ajallu alam. some of the activities conducted by non-Islamic or in general conducted by banks is credit cards. Credit cards is a way that generates money to bank, Islamic and non-Islamic banks. Okay, what a credit card? What is a credit card? A credit card is not a simple contract. It is a complex contract because it involves three entities. A credit card involves three entities. It involves the issuer, here is the bank, and the card holder, you, and the merchant or the place where you're going to use the credit card. And it creates different relationships between those three parties. Okay? For example, now you have a credit card in your wallet. What is the relationship between you, the holder, and the bank, the issuer of that credit card? This relation, if the credit card is in your pocket, it's a promise. It's a promise from the issuer that upon using that credit card, he's going to do two things. He's going to lend you an amount of money to cover your purchase, and he's going to give it to the merchant on your behalf. But as long as the credit card is not used and it is in your pocket, it is only a promise. Once you use it, the promise will become a contract and will be executed. Okay? The relationship between you, this is only one relationship between you, between the holder and the issuer. But there is a problem here, that when you pay back this loan to the bank, if you did not pay it within a specific period of time, within a grace period, then an interest will be applied. So there is an interest article here, and this is problematic because you cannot get into a contract that has an interest article in it or a riba article in it. Okay, this is the problem with this relation. Now the relation between the card holder and the merchant is called hiwala. Hiwala means to transfer a debt from one party to another party. So you go to the store, for example, to buy merchandise. Then when you use your credit card, you are telling the merchant that there is a big guy who's going to cover this purchase. This is the bank. Okay, so this is called hiwala. Hiwala min ahala yuhil. You transferred a debt from you to another creditor. Okay, this is hiwala. Hiwala is acceptable in Islam. There is no problem. Okay, the relationship between the merchant and the bank is kafala and wakala. You know, the bank guarantees for the merchant that whenever my client come to your store and use the credit card, I will pay you the amount of the purchase. Okay, and I will guarantee that. Okay, so this is kafala and wakala, and I become the agent or the representative of my client in paying you that. Now this relationship is acceptable in Islam. Okay, and also the bank has the right to charge fee, like 2% or 2.5% or 3% to the merchant, to that, but it has to be taken from the merchant. Now the problem arises if the merchant, asks the customer to pay that amount. Now this becomes problematic. Why? Because now it becomes riba. You purchase an item that worth $100, but you pay to the merchant $103. Okay? You'll pay back to your bank $103, which is a riba. So you have to be very careful when you use a credit card. For the relation between you and the bank, it is problematic because of the interest article. Now, the scholar said if you have the need to have a credit card and you are sure or most likely sure that you would be able to pay off all your balances within the grace period, you can have a credit card. You can sign that contract. Two conditions. You have the need, which means that if you do not have the need to have a credit card, then you should not have a credit card. As a second condition, that you think because you make such and such amount of money monthly, you would be able to cover or to pay off the amount owed to the bank within the grace period. If those two conditions are fulfilled, then they said you can have a credit card. And the other thing you have to worry about, that make sure when you pay with your credit card, the price should be the same like paying cash. If the store have two different prices for the same item, one for cash, one for credit, then you should not use your credit card. Like gas stations, they have, some of them, they have two different prices. It's $3.19 if you paid cash, it's $3.30 if you pay with your credit card. Okay? This is unacceptable. You cannot use your credit card unless the price for cash and credit is, or both of them, the two prices are the same. Now, Wallahu ta'ala ajallu alam. Inshallah, next week, we'll go in more details about modern transactions that done by non-Islamic banks and to see the ruling concerning them. Wallahu ta'ala ajallu alam. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallim wa barik ala Muhammad. Tfaddal ya Hashim.